So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our two presenters today. Lauren Erickson is a Senior Program Administrator with Rutgers Cooperative Extension. She is a PhD candidate in the Nutritional Sciences program at Rutgers University, where her dissertation research is focused on public perceptions of seafood and aquaculture. Ms. Erickson holds a Master's degree of Science, a Master's of Science degree in Natural Resources from the University of New Hampshire and a Bachelor's degree in Environmental Science from Stockton University. Ms. Erickson's research and community-based programs focus on increasing health, food access in urban communities, understanding consumer food preferences and eating habits, and developing sustainable food systems to the benefit of both local food producers and consumers. And Lauren's going to be presenting in the second half of the program, correct? Yeah, okay. And then Rachel Tansey, who will be presenting first, is a senior county extension associate for the Family and Community Health Sciences Department under Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Monmouth County. She has a bachelor's degree in nutritional sciences from Rutgers University and a master's degree in holistic health from Georgiana Court University. Ms. Tansey works with community partners to educate residents on various topics centered around nutrition, wellness, and healthy well-being. Her primary concentration areas are community health, education, food safety, nutritious eating, self-care, and wellness, with an emphasis on healthy lifestyles in the workplace for employees and their employers. So ladies, welcome. And without further ado, I'm going to let Rachel go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin the presentation, I just wanted to quickly review the structure of Cooperative Extension in case you were not familiar. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is a partnership between the Board of the County Commissioners, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which has faculty and staff in over 20 of the 21 New Jersey counties. We are comprised of 3 departments, including Agriculture and Nutritional Resources, 4-H Youth Development, and us, our Family and Community Health Sciences Department. FCHS provides outreach in New Jersey and beyond on topics related to nutrition, chronic disease prevention, food safety, and overall wellness. We hope you will visit our website for nutrition and wellness related resources and follow us on social media. So as we start our discussion today on seafood and healthy living, I would ask that you please open the poll, Chris. If you could please, Lauren and I would appreciate it if you could complete this poll, and it will help us gauge your experience with seafood and use it for our data purposes later. It is completely anonymous, so if you could just please complete it, it shouldn't take more than a minute or 2. We can leave that open for a second. Today, as Chris mentioned, is part 2 of the continuation from our program offered last week. So if you had missed it, it is recorded and you will be able to see that program on our website. You can just search for FCHS Wellness Wednesdays and you'll see all of our previously recorded programs and any of the upcoming ones that may be of interest for you as well. Today, as Chris mentioned, Lauren and I will be having a discussion on how to eat seafood and information related to its nutritional value, mercury content, reading the labels, and offering some suggestions for recipe ideas. So maybe just one more minute on that. And I think I'll just start here. As Chris introduced, my name is Rachel Tansey. I am with the Family and Community Health Sciences in Monmouth County. And today I'm going to talk about a lot of the nutritional value of seafood. So really, seafood, we generally look at most people and understand that it is a healthy option for us. It is really good for our health. It is low in fat, being a high quality source of protein. Understanding that it is very rich in vitamins and minerals, which help not only our overall health, but specifically our immune system, our brain health, and our nervous systems. Fish is very rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which is important for our heart health and can actually also prevent possible stroke and protect against some different cancers and overall illnesses. Finfish and shellfish are often an important part of our overall healthy diet, and it is encouraged to have the recommended daily value of 2 to 3 servings per week, about 4 ounces of each serving. So while you're preparing your fish, we recommend you use very little added fat and try to use methods that are healthier, like baking, broiling, grilling, or steaming. As you can see here on this infographic from the FDA, it lists quite a few of the most commonly often eaten seafood and fish options. And here on the left, you will see that it says the percent daily value. So we have just a little trick, and Lauren will go into the labeling a little bit more later, but the 5-20 rule, if you're looking at a label and you see 5% or less, we typically consider that to be low in that particular item. And if it's 20% or more, it would be high in that particular item. So some of the circled fish here on the left, you'll see that I've circled that are more common in New Jersey, like the blue crab, the clams, lobster, oysters, scallops, and tuna. So overall, our fish are generally low in saturated fat, and cholesterol is not normally something that we discuss unless that's something that you need to work with your physician on and find out what foods may be better options if you have high cholesterol and not, focus. But overall, we generally say that eating fish is healthy, and we want to make sure that you're having a variety of fish and not always eating the same type of fish all the time. So here I have blue crab circled because it has a decent content for calcium. Our clams are pretty generally high in iron. If you were not aware, iron is very good for us as well, and I'll go into that a little bit further in the presentation here. And vitamin A is a decent amount as well, pretty moderate there. Lobster is very low in calories and total fat. Oysters also very high in iron content and a moderate amount of vitamin C, whereas our scallops have 27 grams of protein for only about 6 of the larger scallops or 14 of the smaller ones. And that is based on a 2,000 calorie diet where we often ask individuals to have about 50 grams of protein per day. So that's obviously over half of your protein for the day just by having one meal with scallops. So that's pretty good too. And tuna, being one of our cold water fishes, also has a good amount of potassium and protein as well. So fish overall is one of our healthiest foods. We know that it's very important to eat fruits and vegetables and a variety of foods, but fish as a protein is super healthy for us. Certain types of fish have different types of nutrients in them. So things like tuna and salmon, our cold water type fishes, are very high in omega-3 fatty acids. Salmon is not typically found in New Jersey. However, it is one that many people consume. So I did just want to mention that it's very healthy for us. But tuna can be found in New Jersey, and it is very healthy along with bluefish, sardines, and mackerel. Having the recommended amount of fish is very important as well because it could possibly even reduce cardiac arrhythmias, reduce clotting issues, and possibly decrease your triglycerides. Also, those omega-3 fatty acids can improve your blood vessel function and help lower your high blood pressure overall. So as we hear about the amazing benefits of our heart health, those omega-3 fatty acids also are very important for our brain. DHA is found in many fish, and it has the potential support for the brain as well, improving memory function and possibly brain boosting benefits by eating more of this fish. Since our brain and nervous system are highly comprised of fat, it stands to reason that the healthier fats we have, the better. So consistent with the DHA is linked to studies that show improved memory and learning retention that relates to cognitive decline. We know fish is loaded with nutrients and it's a great source of lean protein, but did you realize that it actually has some vitamin D in there as well? Vitamin D is what we consider our sunshine vitamin. Just about 20 minutes a day, getting some sun exposure is good for our body. We generally get about 90% of this vitamin from our sun exposure, but about 10% from the proteins and the nutrients found in fish. So the more vitamin D you can get from your food, the better off. And it really helps our bodies absorb calcium, which are needed for our strong bones and teeth, maintaining a healthy heart, as well as our muscles and our nerves. A deficiency in vitamin D can be seen oftentimes with poor bone health, possibly rickets, and even maybe in a weakened immune system, possibly increasing our risks for certain cancers. Fish also is very rich in vitamin B12. B12's main job is to keep our nerve cells healthy, supporting our brain and the production of both DNA and RNA. Low levels of B12 is often seen accompanied by fatigue and dizziness, even numbness or tingling in your extremities. The average adult should consume about 2.4 micrograms each day, but if you eat roughly 3 ounces of clams, you're actually getting well over that amount at 84 micrograms of B12, whereas salmon, a piece of salmon might have about 4.9. Many minerals can be found in fish and seafood as well. So these minerals that we're going to list here are selenium, zinc, iron, and copper. As you can see, selenium plays a role in metabolism, helping boost our immune system and possibly the thyroid function. Zinc can help fight off different bacteria and viruses, and it's crucial for brain function and healthy growth as well. Iron is found throughout the body and is essential for the hemoglobin production, whereas copper also helps support our organs and systems, specifically immune and nervous, and it may help protect against diabetes and heart disease. Overall, just know that fish is essential for optimal health, and we really encourage everyone to eat 2 to 3 servings per day to make sure that they're getting the proper amounts, 2 to 3 servings per week, so that they are getting the proper amounts in the recommendations for from the guidelines. As you can see here, New Jersey seafood is highly nutritious. All seafood is highly nutritious, and we really encourage you to eat some. Lauren will go into a little bit more details of the labeling and the mercury content, but I really want to stress that eating fish can assist in mental and brain health, support the nervous system, maintain healthy bones, enhance the immune function, and promote heart health and circulation. So I will stop sharing now, and Lauren, you can share your screen.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Okay, so I'm going to go into sharing a little bit about what to look for on seafood labels. So first, let's see if I can advance. I'm going to show the nutrition facts label. So this is something that you are probably familiar with, or many of you have likely seen already on some type of food product. And what I wanted to point out here are a few things that are particularly relevant for seafood, as well as some changes that are coming to the nutrition facts label that you see on most types of foods. So first, let me just say that this is going to be most useful for those of you who are purchasing frozen seafood or canned seafood, or maybe some type of pre-prepared seafood item that would come with a nutrition facts label on the package. If you're purchasing local fresh fish, either at a seafood counter or at a local fish market, you might not have the full nutrition facts label, but this will at least give you a good idea of what to look for when you do have the label available. So first and foremost, I mentioned that some changes are coming. So the nutrition facts label is not going to change drastically, but a few things will be changing on some foods based on the size of the company that produces those items. These changes have taken place already, and for others, they should be implemented by July of this year. So that will be coming soon. So let's take a look at the nutrition facts. One of the first things to point out is the serving size, which you can see near the top of the nutrition facts label. And I'll also mention what we're looking at on the screen right now is just a generic example of a nutrition facts label. This is not a seafood specific label. This is actually what the FDA has published as their example to show the changes. So if we look at the top, we see the serving size. And what's important to realize with the serving size that's shared on the nutrition facts label is that this is not necessarily a recommendation. This is the regular amount that is customarily consumed, or how much people usually eat of this food product. So that gives you a good idea of the nutrient content for the amount of this product that you would probably be eating. The change is that this is now larger and bolder, so it will make it a little bit easier for you to point out that common serving size on the label. The next thing to look for are the calories. And so this gives you the total amount of calories that are present in a serving of this product. Remember to keep in mind, this is not necessarily the total calories of the entire package, it's the amount of the serving size. Next thing to look at are the percent daily values. So you'll see a number of different daily values here, many of which Rachel mentioned in her portion of the presentation. Some of these have been updated in terms of the percentages that are recommended as part of your total diet. And a lot of these changes are coming into place because as the evidence supporting the different nutritional needs is improved and the evidence body grows over time, we're able to better make recommendations that might be a little more targeted and more effective. So you will see some changes there. You will also see, so added sugars are something that have been beginning to be added to labels and will be required as of July of this year. So you'll see that in place. Vitamin D and potassium are also listed. Again, this is important for seafood in particular. As Rachel mentioned, vitamin D is something we really think about getting from a lot of different types of seafood. So that's now going to be on the label. Two things that are no longer required on the label are vitamin A and vitamin C. Now, some companies may elect to keep those nutrients listed on the nutrition facts label, so you might still see them, but vitamin A and vitamin C are not generally deficient among the US population. So that is why there's been a change. They're no longer required. Most people are getting enough. However, many people are not getting enough vitamin D. So that is driving the addition of vitamin D to this nutrition facts label. So to look at an example of an actual seafood product label, I have this image, which is from a package of frozen flounder. So if we wanted to look through the few items that we've talked about, we'll first look at serving size, and we can see the serving size is about 4 ounces. So that does align with our recommendations to eat serving sizes or 4 ounces of seafood 2 to 3 times per week. But what's interesting to note here is that one fillet is actually a little bit more than 4 ounces. 4 ounces is 4/5 of a fillet in this package. So that makes it a little bit tricky to tell how much of these different nutrients is in each piece of fish, but you can kind of gauge. So if you're looking at 4/5 of a fillet, that's about 80% or a little bit less than the entire thing, more than 3/4, but less than the entire piece. You can also next look for protein. So as Rachel mentioned, seafood is a great source of lean protein. And this frozen flounder, as an example, has 17 grams of protein per serving. In general, we're looking to consume around 50 grams of protein a day, give or take, and that varies based on people's age and size and total caloric intake. But this is a good source of protein, 17 grams out of a total of 50 that we're looking at over the course of the day. Now, when we look at vitamin D, however, we see that this fish does not have vitamin D or not detectable levels of vitamin D. So you might say, if you see this on a package, I thought seafood was a great source of vitamin D. If we look at another example, we'll take mahi-mahi, and we look at the vitamin D content on this actual seafood label, we see that this fish does have vitamin D and about 15% of the required daily amount. So this gets back to what Rachel has mentioned in terms of eating a variety of seafood. So the flounder maybe didn't have vitamin C, but vitamin D, but the mahi does. So this could be a good choice to include. We're also looking again at protein, 32 grams of protein in this mahi, which is fantastic. And now when we look at the serving size, we do notice that this is 6 ounces. So this is a little bit more than the recommended 4-ounce serving, but this is okay because what we're thinking about is seafood intake overall. So if every serving is not exactly 4 ounces, that's okay because it's going to fit into the bigger picture of how much we're eating. So you could approach this in 2 ways. You could think about these 6 ounces and how they fit into your weekly seafood intake, or you could look at this and say, okay, this is a 6-ounce serving. I'm going to eat about 2/3 of it, which would be 4 ounces, and save the rest to include into another meal at a later time. And again, to help balance all of these things, eating a variety of seafood types is really going to help balance out all of these differences in serving sizes and nutrient contents and the vitamins and minerals. The variety aspect is really going to help make a big difference. So Rachel mentioned nutrient content claims. So if we're looking at excellent sources, that means it's going to have more than 20% of the recommended daily value of a particular nutrient. A good source is between 10 and 20% of the daily value. So if we look at some actual label examples to see what this looks like, we can look at a package, again, of flounder fillets, for example, and see that this is an excellent source of protein, meaning it has 20% or more of the daily value. We can also see good source of calcium, for example, on this seafood package. What I wanted to point out specifically is that you might not see excellent sources or high levels of omega-3 noted on seafood packages. And this is because there are not daily values established for specific omega-3 fatty acids that are commonly found in seafood. So instead, what you're likely to see is a mention of the total amount of omega-3s on a seafood package, reflecting what's in that particular type of seafood. So as an example, the dietary guidelines for Americans recommend on average getting about 250 milligrams per day or 1,750 milligrams per week. So again, eating a variety of seafood types is going to help you meet this, especially if you're choosing seafood that are high in omega-3s. Another attribute that I wanted to mention, and something you might see on a label, is local. So here in New Jersey, we are very fortunate to have many different kinds of seafood that are either caught, landed, harvested, or raised in New Jersey. And you might see all of those terms or any one of those terms on a label. You might also see our Jersey seafood icons, which represent different kinds of seafood that we have here in New Jersey. And in some instances, you might even see the Jersey Fresh logo on seafood or used in a seafood marketplace. Technically, the Jersey Fresh logo and label was designed for fresh produce. However, it does sometimes show up in the seafood marketplace as well. I also wanted to mention that you might see wild caught or farm raised on different types of seafood labels. So overall, there are many different kinds of healthy and delicious wild caught and farm raised fish and shellfish choices. We get this question a lot. Should I eat wild caught? Should I eat farm raised? Should I eat both? Should I eat neither? And again, the take home message is really to eat seafood, eat a variety of kinds of seafood, and whether it's farmed or wild caught, you're likely going to be getting very similar benefits and to be getting similar low levels of things that you might be concerned about in seafood when you're looking at the same type of fish. So for example, wild caught salmon and farm raised salmon are likely to have very similar levels of omega-3 fatty acids. So both can be good choices. And again, eating that variety of seafood types is really what's going to help you maximize the nutritional benefits and minimize any risks. Sustainability is something that's increasingly talked about with seafood as well. And so I wanted to show an example of a seafood package that has some sustainability language. You can see here that this package is referencing a sustainability commitment, which you can also get by knowing your producer. So if you're shopping local, whether people are catching fish for local markets or raising local fish on farms, you can get to know your fish suppliers and better understand their connection and commitment to sustainability. You might also see certain companies that embrace sustainable practices, and many of them are certainly willing to share more information with you about what their particular sustainability certification might mean and what's included in those practices based on their suppliers. And then finally, based on whether your seafood is wild caught or farm raised, you might see either the Marine Stewardship Council, the MSC certification, or the Best Aquaculture Practices certification, both of which are endorsed by third parties who have verified that the seafood product has met certain criteria for sustainability. So overall, look for seafood that is certainly nutritious, that is local when you can, that is healthy, that is sustainable, and of course, delicious. So one of the big take-home messages is that you're going to be most successful at incorporating healthy seafood into your diet if you find ways that you really enjoy seafood. And we're going to hold that thought for a little while here. We're going to get back to Rachel at the end of the presentation, and she is going to share some thoughts on recipes and preparation of seafood. So first, however, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that is not generally on the label. So when you're shopping for seafood, mercury might be something that is on your mind or that you may have heard about or might be concerned with. So I'm going to take some time to give an overview of mercury in seafood and then also dive into the specific guidance that exists for special populations who might be most vulnerable to mercury. So I'm going to focus on the EPA and FDA advice for seafood intake. So we have the dietary guidelines for Americans, which provide seafood intake guidance for the general population. And then we also have specific dietary guidance for special subgroups. These subgroups include women who are pregnant, women who might become pregnant, and this includes essentially all women of childbearing age. And this is considered to be women who are about 16 to 49 years old. And this is as defined by the federal guidance. Women who are breastfeeding, and this also includes young children. So why are we talking about these groups with respect to mercury? Mercury exposure in utero is associated with impaired neurological development. So this might have negative influences on thinking, learning, memory, and motor skills. And this is important for this particular group of women and young children because fetal growth and infancy are times of key development. So it's at this particular time that mercury can have the biggest potential impact. And thus we're talking about these specific subgroups. So let's take a closer look at mercury in seafood. So elemental mercury, which I'm representing here as Hg, which is its elemental abbreviation, is naturally found in the environment, but it's mobilized by human activity. So that means things like burning fossil fuels and mining and other industrial related processes can make mercury more active in the environment, including in the aquatic system. So we can see mercury deposited into our oceans, our rivers, our lakes and streams, and ultimately it will settle in the sediment or the bottom. It's here that bacteria convert elemental mercury into what's called methyl mercury. And methyl mercury is the type of mercury that can do the most harm. So that's what we're particularly concerned with from a dietary intake perspective. Now, once methyl mercury is active in the sediment, it can be released again into the water. And this is where fish come into play. So fish can ingest small amounts of mercury from the water. And as larger fish eat smaller fish, these larger fish can start to accumulate more mercury in their tissues. And then of course we think about even larger fish or older fish that eat this next level of fish for their own dietary intake. And we can see how methyl mercury can now concentrate at higher levels moving up the food chain. This is where the concern comes from. And we're going to return to this graphic in a minute to look at these differences across the board in different types of fish. But first, I wanted to mention, while we're talking about mercury, we also have to keep in mind these beneficial nutrients that Rachel mentioned, the omega-3s, the protein, the vitamins and minerals. Especially, we kind of have a conflict here. If we think about mercury being potentially detrimental to neurological development, as Rachel mentioned, omega-3s such as DHA are very beneficial for neurological benefit. So the question comes to mind, how do we maximize these benefits but minimize the risk of mercury for those who might be most vulnerable? And that's where our advice from the EPA and the FDA comes into play. And we can basically look at this advice to guide healthy seafood intake by these special populations for whom mercury might be of most concern. So you see on the screen now a small version of the chart. We're going to dive into that and take a little bit of a closer look in a minute, but I just wanted to give you a few important notes to consider. So this is federal guidance developed for nationwide use. It's designed primarily for consumers who are purchasing seafood in the retail marketplace. So if you or someone you know are recreationally fishing for consumption, it's always recommended to consult specific mercury advisories for local waterways. And these are generally issued by the state or possibly the county. And we do have a resource at the end of the presentation that can direct you to where to find some of that information. The advice includes seafood for which there is sufficient and consistent data regarding mercury content. So it's important that this guidance is correct and based on the evidence. So you might notice that certain kinds of seafood are not included. That's likely because there is not enough data to date to support where they would fall on the chart. I'll also mention that this takes a precautionary approach, and the chart has built in a layer of error so that the advice is on the conservative side, meaning that it errs on the side of safety. The goal here is to keep women and children safe from a dietary perspective, and that's certainly the goal of the agencies that have published this advice. It's not always species specific. So I did want to mention that when we take a closer look, you might see, for example, tuna is in a couple different places on the chart because different types of tuna might have different mercury levels. And in general, while the target audience of women and children are recommended to follow this advice, I did want to mention that women should always consult their doctor or their child's pediatrician for professional medical and dietary advice, always, but especially during pregnancy and postnatal. So here's our graphic again, looking at our different kinds of fish. And let's take a closer look at what the EPA and FDA advice is suggesting and how it's orchestrated. So again, this advice is only based on mercury and keeping people safe when they're consuming seafood. So the advice is going to contain best choices, good choices, and choices that should be avoided by the target group of women and children that we discussed. And this advice is based on mercury content that varies according to certainly size or trophic level of the fish, level of the food chain where these different fish exist, which I've represented here by size in my graphic, but age of the fish and harvest location can also play a role. And so that's all taken into account in combination in creating this chart. So you might be asking, okay, which fish is which? How do I know? So that's what the chart is going to help us figure out which choices to eat and which to potentially avoid. But I also wanted to mention that it's important to look at this question of how much, how often. So for women in the target audience, it's essentially recommended to consume 8 to 12 ounces per week. And one serving is about 4 ounces, or as Rachel suggested, thinking as about the size of the palm of your hand is what can be considered one serving. And for children, these amounts are reduced to age-appropriate amounts. And what's important to take into account is that that 8 to 12 ounces per week is variable based on which kind of fish are selected from the chart. So let's take a closer look at these levels. So choices that should be avoided by women who are pregnant, breastfeeding, or planning to become pregnant, and also young children include this collection of seafood types that you see on the chart. And I'm going to point out in each of these slides, so the overall federal guidance, but since we're presenting from New Jersey this afternoon, I am going to go ahead and highlight some New Jersey fish that you can get locally here in New Jersey. And these are a shark, swordfish, and big eye tuna are sometimes landed here in New Jersey and recommended that these can be enjoyed by others who are not pregnant, planning to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or small children, according to the dietary guidelines recommendations. So next we go to the good choices. Some good news that I'll point out to start is that the list is getting longer. You can see there are more options in the good choices compared to the choices to avoid for the target group. And again, we have a number of different types of fish that are local to New Jersey that can be selected from the good choices options. And then finally, the best choices. we have here the longest list, which is further good news. And we will be able to show this chart at the end if anyone wants to take a closer look or see this up on the screen for a little bit longer period of time. But again, here you'll see many kinds of fish that are available here in New Jersey, and including on this best choices list, a lot of types of seafood that are commonly eaten by people throughout the US. So you'll notice it's not local to New Jersey, but salmon is on the list. The flounder that I've mentioned is on the best choice list. Clams, cod, crabs on this list. Lobster, which is a great thing to have on the best choices list regarding mercury. So a lot of healthy options are here, and that's the good news. So I will now stop sharing. I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel, and I'm going to let her take over regarding cooking and consuming seafood.
Great, thank you. Let me just pull mine back up. There we go. So I'm going to go over a few tips and suggestions and recommendations on how to choose the fish and seafood we're eating, some suggestions on cooking and consuming the seafood. So there we go. So as Lauren was mentioning, and I mentioned earlier, it is really important that we make sure we're eating our fish overall. There may be concerns either way with the mercury content, but the nutritional content pretty much will outweigh any of the negative aspects of eating fish and seafood. So it is encouraged, even as Lauren mentioned, for pregnant women to get their weekly doses of fish and seafood, and it will help promote the brain and spinal cord development in their babies. For infants and children as young as 6 months of age, fish is very beneficial and will support the brain development and immunity that they have. Teens, as they grow, we've seen how teens can grow so rapidly and their development throughout puberty, and as well as adults for their strong bones and preventing osteoporosis, and older adults to help maintain muscle mass. When we are purchasing our seafood, as Lauren mentioned as well, it is really important to make sure we buy from a reputable source. I know Joanne Kinsey talked about this last week in the part 1 of this series. So if you're interested in a little bit more detail, you can go back and review that recording. However, just to give a brief overview here, I just wanted to let you know there are many fish markets along the Jersey Shore and even inland that are reputable and have good, fresh, local seafood and fish. We really want to make sure, even if you are purchasing it from a store or wherever else, there's no real fishy odor when you're picking your seafood. It might have kind of a briny or saltwater type smell, but it should never smell bad. And we've all probably, unfortunately, smelled what bad fish smells like. So hopefully your fish should not smell that way. The eyes, if you're buying a whole fish, they should be clear. The flesh or the body of the fillet, or even if it's a whole fish, should be pretty firm. And if you just gently push it down, it should kind of give a nice bounce back and not leave your finger imprinted. So that's how you can sort of tell. And if it's behind a case and you have, someone helping you, you can ask them to do that, and they can definitely, show you what the fish looks like before you purchase it. If you're purchasing shellfish, please, try to make sure that they are kept alive, such as clams and oysters and things. If you give the shell a little tap, if it seems to be open, just tap it a little bit. It should gently close up. If it does not, then it's probably dead and not good for eating. So throw that one away. Make sure your fish is refrigerated and stored properly. If it was kept on ice in the store or wherever you purchased it, do so as well at home. Our New Jersey coast is full of bountiful seafood. These are just a few of the more common ones. As Lauren showed in her chart, we can bring that up at the end if you'd like as well. A lot of the New Jersey fish that is readily available. And, you can even go with things that are not necessarily New Jersey fish, salmon, things like that, definitely healthy as well. But the key here is to have a variety, to make sure that we're not focusing on one type of fish always, that we have a variety of different types of fish for all of the different nutrients and benefits that they have. Just wanted to show this from our choosemyplate.gov. Just a nice little quick tip sheet. If you went on their website and printed it out for yourself, it's really good information just to kind of have on the side of your fridge to be creative with your seafood. You know, eating a variety of the seafood, as I mentioned. It's interesting. A lot of people always think of tuna fish sandwiches or even tuna salad. However, there's other options as well there. Grilling up some shrimp, putting that on a sandwich or in a wrap, having, you know, even a tuna steak on your sandwich. You could do that, grilled scallops, whatever, you know, kind of interest you have for your fish that week, you can alternate different options. Making sure you're growing up with healthy seafood as well is important for our children, showing them how important it is to have a healthy diet with a variety of not only our fish, but all of the foods that we eat is really important to get the proper nutrients that we need to stay healthy. This is just a recipe actually I created once. We eat it all the time in our family. We will just get some tuna steaks and pepper the outside of it and maybe some sesame seeds and sear it in a hot skillet with a little drizzle of oil. Cook it to the preferred doneness, generally getting the internal temperature to about 145 degrees. If you put a meat thermometer in the thickest part of the meat for about 10 seconds, it should reach 145 degrees. And then we make a fruit salsa. I've made this fruit salsa with mango. I've made it with pineapple. I've made it with watermelon. Even just some apples that we've had in the fridge when we really didn't have any of the tropical fruits. Putting a little scoopful of it on top of the fish as it's done, it is delicious, and it gives you a variety of nutrients there as well because you're incorporating different fruits and vegetables into your diet. This was a recipe I found, the New Jersey Fish and Seafood Cookbook. So the link is up there on the right, and I just screenshotted the recipe. So if you did look up that document, you can find quite a long, lengthy cookbook. And it's interesting because they give you some information about the New Jersey fish, and they sort of highlight each fish in each category, give you a little picture of them. For instance, you know, monkfish can be found in New Jersey is often considered the poor man's lobster, that by the time you fillet that fish and get the meat, it sort of resembles and tastes very similar to lobster. So, you know, they have many different fun facts basically in this cookbook, and then a variety of different recipes. So here I was just kind of screenshotting the recipe for scallops and wanted to show everybody just this option of adding it to linguine and maybe having some spinach, which is wonderful for us, and our dark green leafy vegetables, also high in vitamin C. So that really will help many different benefits to our nutrients and vitamins that are needed. Also down here on the right is our Family and Community Health Sciences healthy recipe links. One is in a PDF format and the other one has some videos. You will find a variety of other fish options in there as well. They were highlighted in last week's presentation, but I wanted to make sure I gave you the link here so that if you didn't get a chance to view that, and we have many, many other different recipes with a variety of different proteins and healthy options as well. Okay, here I just screenshotted another recipe that I found for pizza with clams. Pizza is, you know, sometimes viewed as not being so healthy. However, this recipe offered a whole wheat dough, which is the healthier option for making our pizza. Adding some part skim or low-fat cheeses is always a healthier option and better for us as well. And then putting some of the fresh clams is a wonderful option. If you don't have fresh, you could use the canned. However, it adds some more of those nutrients and vitamins and minerals that are needed as well in our diet. So again, that's from the Eating Well website. There's some resources that I just wanted to offer to show, many of which can be found throughout our website. You can go and just do some searches for these documents as well. And then at the end of the presentation, you will receive an email with the recording, and many of these resources will also be listed there for you to review. So I think that concludes my portion here.